Well, hello, leader. Welcome back to the Fierce Factor podcast. It's your coach, Kaylee here, and you are tuning in to episode number 166. Today, I have something truly remarkable for you. I am so excited to introduce a brand new program that I have built in collaboration with Aesthetic Record EMR. And we really built this in response to, let's call it the critical opportunity our industry has for market differentiation. And this program was inspired by a conversation I had with a client who called me frantic one day because essentially a competitor had opened up a practice down the street from her, was offering a screaming deal, new client Botox special for like $6 a unit or something. And this practice had called to recruit her team members, asking them to leave to work for them for more money. As you can imagine, she felt like she was being completely suffocated and victim to a hostile takeover. And at the end of the day, the reality is this could technically happen to any of us. Our industry is growing exponentially, and there are a lot of new practices opening and a low barrier to entry. Quite honestly, anybody can put a sign on their door and say they're an expert. And instead of getting upset, we have to figure out how to face this challenge. And so this week, I'll be sharing session 1 of this tool as a free resource for you. I recently flew out to Dallas to sit down with Dr. Tiffany Hall, Chief Growth Officer at Aesthetic Record, to record a 4-part series called Developing Your Proprietary Aesthetic Method, or PAM for short. I taught this program independently before folding this into our 6-week business growth certification program, Confidence to Scale. And by popular demand, I have been asked many times and commissioned now by the aesthetic industry's leading electronic medical record company to develop a partner asset that could be affordable, accessible, understandable, practical, and actionable for our industry. And so in this episode, you'll hear the answer to that calling in the form of an educational conversation about developing your proprietary aesthetic method. This methodology, this system that I'm teaching you could be the $1 million antidote to familiar pain points that you may be experiencing if you're like our clients who feel some of these pain points when they come to work with us. Maybe you're growing, but finding yourself overwhelmed with all of the demands in your business, not sure where to go next. You've hired or are considering hiring another provider, but your patients are somewhat resistant to being treated by them because you are really the only one they trust. Maybe you've already spent a ton of money, time, and energy on branding deep dives that are designed to help you articulate your brilliance, but you still stumble when it comes to sort of defining what your business's secret sauce is. Or maybe you just want to be known for something, but you can't quite put your finger on what that is. And the reality is, I know this about you because you're a listener of this podcast. You realize that competition is increasing, the barrier to entry is declining, and you have this burning itch to be seen, heard, understood for your own philosophy, technique, or approach. And believe me, I get it. But just being the best, unfortunately, isn't enough. It's about your ability to communicate that to the world in a way that defines you and your brilliance in a category of one, essentially becoming competitionless. Okay, leader, please enjoy this session 1 introduction to our new partnership program, the Proprietary Aesthetic Method. And head to the show notes to get the link to download and subscribe to this new program. I can't wait to hear what you come up with, and enjoy. Hi there, welcome to the Fierce Factor podcast. I'm your host, Kaylee Lindholm. And I think it's time for us women to shift the conversation in business and step into our feminine leadership to do the most iconic work the aesthetic industry has ever seen. Each week, I'll be bringing a powerful dose of strategy, sarcasm, solutions, and sass that will rev up your creativity and ignite your brilliance as you link arms with me along our shared path of personal and professional growth in 20 minutes or less. Let's go.
Hey guys, welcome to a bonus episode of For the Record, and it's going to be an amazing one. We have today with us the CEO of KLC Consulting, Kaylee Lindholm, and she and I had a great discussion recently about the industry trends, what's happening in the marketplace, you guys as practice owners and injectors and staff, and all the things that you're faced with every single day to make your med spas really stand out. We wanted to come to you today with a great example of what you can do to make your practice look different, feel different, and really bring in patients who are really focused on all the things that you offer. And we're going to start today with a session one, in a sense, of a longer series, talking about the multi-million-dollar value of the proprietary aesthetic method, or as we're going to call it, PAM, throughout our session. So Kaylee, welcome to our show. We're so glad to have you here today.
Thanks so much, Tiffany. I'm excited to be here again, really. My second time here on the podcast, and also to collaborate in this partnership to bring such a valuable resource to aesthetic providers in our industry. I think it's definitely needed and something that hopefully a lot of our mutual clients will take advantage of and help them differentiate themselves in the industry.
Yeah, as you think about Aesthetic Record, our system, we're really helping the practices with the numbers, right? The business insights, charting, HIPAA, medical things. But we really leave off on the business building part, the business branding part, and the things that right now in the marketplace as we grow are the most important things. Because again, the market is, inundated right now with people coming from everywhere to become an injector. And we see practices, they put them up, they take them down, they're merging and consolidating. It's a very hot place to be right now. So we're going to dive into that today and see how to really improve all of our business acumen, what we can do to make our practices better.
Awesome. Yeah, so we're going to talk about the state of the industry and how rapidly it's really growing and how dynamic all the shifts really are. And we're going to talk about some of the challenges that we see aesthetic practices face as it relates to their ability to stand out and differentiate when most aesthetic providers are offering a lot of the same treatments and services. And then we're going to talk about what to expect in this series where we're going to bring to you some really valuable education and resources around how to develop your own proprietary aesthetic method.
And I think, too, as you think about the series, you have to usually go somewhere to get a coach or go to a session somewhere, pay money to travel. This is going to be available for our listeners in your home, in your practice, virtually. So it's a phenomenal resource for you. And it gives you, I think, really soup to nuts, the things that you can do today when you finish the sessions to start really changing the game for your practice. So let's start with the industry trends. I want to start there with what you're seeing even with the practices that you work with now and how the market is shifting.
Yeah. So first of all, the data speaks for itself, right? Like we know that the industry is growing at an exponential pace. And if you look at the shifts post-pandemic, there are a lot of macroeconomic trends that we're seeing impact aesthetic providers from the sense that there's, of course, an increase in demand, as we know, on the consumer side. But there's also a lot of what we saw after the pandemic, a lot of hospital employees that were looking to get out of the rat race and into, the beautiful industry of aesthetics. And one major shift that I've been seeing is that really great providers, injectors who, are working as an employee in a business are like, okay, I have a core shift in my motivation in terms of wanting to have my own autonomy and influence and impact in this industry and wanting to start their own business. And you and I both know, Tiffany, that while many of our aesthetic providers are just completely phenomenal, brilliant clinically, there isn't a lot of space for them to get the education around how to differentiate their practice and brand themselves as somebody that offers something unique to, let's say, the med spa next door.
Yeah, thinking about KLC Consulting specifically, what kind of practices do you guys work with on the aggregate? I'm sure you have small, large, medium size. Give us just an idea of who you work with now to really get these kinds of insights.
Yeah, so our sweet spot is really aesthetic providers who have been in business 1 to 3 years, really understand what it takes to kind of the basic business building blocks and are looking to scale up and really make a name for themselves, develop their thought leadership in the industry, essentially get to the place where they become fully booked out, where you see these injectors, we call it success by accident, where all of a sudden, how many businesses do we know that started in 2020 or that were like these pandemic baby boomer, baby businesses, and now it's 2023 and they're raking in $2-3 million in revenue. And these are like solo injectors who were just like, I just want to go have this, express my passion and my creativity and take care of patients. And now all of a sudden they're responsible as a CEO for running a multi-million-dollar empire. And so we see them get to this point where they're like, I have patients that are coming to me for me, and I have to, how do I scale up, right? There's only so much time that one provider has in their day. And so rather than burning, the candle at both ends or burning the midnight oil, right? And working more and more hours and conceding and giving more and giving up weekends and giving up personal time, right? Which is the reason why most providers start their business to begin with, is to have that time and that autonomy and do it their own way. They're like, I know, how about I hire some other providers to work for me? And guess what? Patients want to work with their injector. They don't really want to just hand off to another injector. So it's this really critical inflection point where we see this industry driving from a demand standpoint, and then all these new injectors are like sliding into the DMs of the experienced injectors, like, hey, can I shadow you? You mentor me? And now there's this whole other area of, how do I monetize that? And essentially what we're seeing is just, we call it the wild, wild west for a long time, I think, and it's sort of like that still. And so, with these types of challenges and the idea that there is such a low barrier to entry, anybody can put up a sign. A customer of ours said, everybody and their mother has an Instagram and a syringe. And so, but how do you differentiate? How do you discern? How does a patient discern, what kind of experience they're going to get, that they're going to the right place and that they're going to connect with that provider and that they're really going to get that exceptional experience and results that they're looking for? And that's sort of the challenge here is, the positivity of the demand, but also the negative of the saturation.
Anna, I ask you about your client list because I think there's like a bookend concern that I think about the industry as it grows. People think they're either A, too small to need a business coach or a foundational sort of business building program, or I'm so big I've outgrown it.
Yeah.
And frankly, those are the two places where you're probably at most risk and need to think about that. So I think if you're, we would say a baby injector coming in, a baby business owner coming in, these are the things you lay in on the foundation today so that when you do decide to scale and add another injector, add an esthetician, even add a front desk person who's going to now be your talking head to patients, it's all the same lingo, it's the same kind of procedures, they have the same fun names, and it's tied back to the practice and not to me, Tiffany, the injector. And so I feel like, if you're listening to this thinking, gosh, I'm so small, I'm just getting started, I'm not ready yet. This is when you start. Trust me, as you build technology, whatever you build the first 1 year of technology onto you for the next 20.
Yep.
I think in a business it's the same way. They say, your first 30 hires and your first year of business dictates the rest of your existence. And so this is like the thing you do today to get going. And then also if you're bigger too, to kind of change your mindset or perspective, to reinvent your brand if you want to do that. But I think you mentioned the industry, coming in, so people are coming in nonstop. We're seeing for Aesthetic Record, a lot of our solo injectors who've been solo historically for a long time are now bringing on another injector, or bring on an esthetician, or they're getting into a bigger space with multiple rooms. And so now it's like children. 1 is 1, 2 is a million,
Yeah.
The second child's like having 16 more children. It's the same thing. And all of a sudden it's SOPs, it's branding, it's consistency, it's experience. And that's a multiplicative paradigm shift for many people that I think your program really covers. So I want to dive into more of that. Let's
awesome.
Kick off.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what is PAM? What is this whole idea of a proprietary aesthetic method? Because that to me makes my heart sing. I love it so much.
Yeah.
Take us through that.
So it's really the solution to many of the challenges that we're talking about. And I love what you said about the bookend scenarios where, it's funny because I've thought about this a lot. And of course, the collection of practical and tactical wisdom of working with hundreds of practices and seeing this in many different scenarios. And then also as a business owner myself, we tend to think we start out and all of a sudden we're 5 years in and we act like we haven't changed and grown. And a lot of the problems come because we just start plugging in solutions to problems that arise because we're growing. So we're like trying to fix growing pains instead of realizing that we have to develop this foundational core, infrastructure of who we are, what we stand for, and this proprietary aesthetic method is essentially your tool to help you differentiate yourself in the practice, to attract, a really excited, mission-driven team who is behind you for what you do that's different in the industry. It's a way to call out, when I talk with providers all the time who are like, I spent $50,000 on a branding deep dive and did this whole rebrand and my new website website, all my stuff. And like, it's exciting and everybody gets all pumped up and it's great, showy and markety, but then nothing essentially changes. And part of it's because what we talked about before, just as we start to grow, the business essentially, when you're a service provider, your business is you. And so the goal is to essentially separate the business so it has its own soul and you get to have your own soul and have a life, And so what it is, it's a way of defining the specificity of what you bring, your specific technique, your experience, your long-term care plan, the client journey. It's where's the gap in your market? Who's being underserved? What are you doing to fill that gap? And then how are you marketing it with such specificity that you're becoming known for something distinct and you're magnetizing patients to you for this specific methodology versus having to go out and push and market the same products and services onto a community or a consumer who has a lot of options out there.
Yeah, think about a filler. Let's say, a box of Restylane. We all have it, right? If you're an injector, you all have access to it. Everyone has access to it. How is your box different than my box? It's the same price. I think we get into thinking about selling things by the syringe. I think that's like the antithesis of this. Selling it by the syringe is really the opposite of this idea. Right now, semaglutide being a huge thing in the marketplace. I just had a discussion last week with someone who's like, I can't just roll out a shot. I have to roll out a nutrition program and the shot and the follow-up and the overall wellness exams. And it's got to be a program. Otherwise, it's just the same thing that everyone else is doing. Totally. It's almost like programming, if you will, if you want to call it that, things. They feel like they're these nice curated offerings that are different or feel different than everyone else's things. And I think that's our biggest challenge in the marketplace right now is the me too of I've got it too, you have it, we have it, I have it, you have it. It becomes a sea of all the same faces and even the same look. I think looking at your outcomes as well, does that define who you are, how you inject? Are you looking at men? We have a whole 4 patient generations now in the marketplace, from these little babies who are just now getting their lips and their toxin all the way to people who are 70, 80 getting injectable. So we had this amazing broad range now of patients with different interests. You can really niche down now where you couldn't have done that 20 years ago, but now you can almost find your little niche and go, to your point, deep and really focus on that and build a whole brand around it.
Absolutely. And I think it's scary to do that, right? Because you feel like you're alienating or leaving business or money on the table when you niche down. But there's something that's called the halo effect. And basically when somebody sees you as an expert, you're an expert, right? So, if you're going to go to the Four Seasons, you might be going there for the bed, like for the pillow, for the hotel, but you're also going to expect really great food, a really great experience while you're there. Probably going to have, the best service and a really beautiful gym, right? And so it's essentially like that, finding what you really are incredible at. And to your point, Tiffany, of just these programming and looking at the offering that you have, the full spectrum of what you have to offer more holistically, is that you're able to charge top dollar for your services, right? Whereas on the flip side, we naturally start to see discounting happening, and then that's where your profit margins get squeezed. And that is a recipe for disaster. That is a slippery slope. Whereas when you're offering something that you're basically comparing apples to oranges, right? So you can get cool sculpting anywhere, but Tiffany's body contouring package, you can't get anywhere but with Tiffany, right?
I think that's the idea. We think about surgeons a lot. The knee, I use a knee implant example all the time. No one says I want the Stryker knee implant. They say I want to walk again. They don't come in and specify which thing you have to use. I feel like we let patients have a lot of control in our market because we haven't historically focused on this. And it's not because patients are demanding or we're wet noodles. It's because we haven't focused on differentiating who we are compared to our competitor. So I think about people, we were just talking about, noses by Nyack. He's a great example. Yeah. Julie Horn has her technique. We have all these people who have these really specific techniques that we've talked about. I think Leslie Fletcher with her microtoxing, and she's got the Arc Derm technique. Like, these are all things that they have really spent time on to make it their own, that no one else could replicate it. Even if they can do the same technique, it doesn't feel like it's theirs because someone else has already branded it and put their name on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike Nyack has his bespoke facelift. He calls the omakase facelift. And, I learned about him when some injector clients in my academy were at a retreat about 1.5 years ago. And I asked, who do you send, if your patients are ready for a facelift, who do they go to? And one in Minnesota and one in Texas both said, well, there's several there's a lot of really good surgeons out there, but we both, each of them independently said, we had a patient who went to Mike Nyack and spent, $100,000 for a facelift. And they're like, wait, I didn't know that patient had $100,000 to spend. I would have helped them spend that money, And so I'm like, I got to research this guy, and it is like it is his way, and no one questions it. No one asks. It is this level of just confidence, I think, around what he has to offer and the results that he brings. So there's no wavering. And I think patients appreciate that, because when you show them the process, they feel like they're on a journey. They know where they're going. It's like getting in an airplane and the pilot's like, mystery location, mystery
We'll let you decide where we go today.
Right. You can fly this thing, right? Instead, it's like, we're going here. Here's how you buckle up. Here's what time. Here's right. And so it's a similar sort of ideology, having this method, to take patients through an experience that you decide and you define that they're going to go through.
And I think the end goal is to having a fully booked schedule. Think about it, Mike Nyack. When you become that confident, you can be, because you're like, if you don't want to get it, I've got 15 more waiting on me who do, and my schedule is completely full. I have a wait list. I think all of a sudden the business part of it comes into play, where your capacity is, you're busting at the seams, we hope. You're having to bring on another injector, which again has to replicate that same magic again, because you've now created this whole brand persona. So I feel like the booking part of it, the goal is always to book everyone out 100%, but then to convert in the room as well to these kinds of procedures, so that we're not just spending time doing free consults all day either.
Totally. So. Well, and I'll give an example. I was at just like a happy hour with some friends, and one of the girls had her lips done, and another friend said, wow, your lips look really great, and I should go to my injector. And she was like, no, you have to go to my injector, because it's the specific Pout by Priscilla. And she could name off. She's like, it's pain-free. There were like 3 things she would say, like, it's painless, it's, da-da-da-da-da. And that is the power of, can you imagine, like, these are the lips you want. Products probably exactly the same. Mm-hmm. The probably pain-free everywhere you go, or, some sort of, a pain tolerance. But, so it's giving your patient something to specifically call out, so that it's easily shareable, it's easily replicatable. Then what happens is, if your business has the specific methodology, as you hire new injectors, they're trained on that. So no one's questioning, I want that injector, that. No, everybody is certified on this method. And so your patients can feel confident as you're growing to be able to delegate to new providers as well.
I think that brings up 2 points for me, which I hope we're going to kind of get into here. One is, if you're using word of mouth referrals, people will often say to me, I don't do marketing. I don't need to do all that stuff. I don't do like Instagram. I don't do websites and Google ads. If you're doing word of mouth, what you just said is like the reason to do this, because if I want someone out there being my talking head, I want them to know my 1, 2, 3 punch, right, to get patients in the door. So I think that's even more important to spend time there. But, as you think about that, the second part of that is you're bringing on now new injectors. So what you mentioned about onboarding and the method, I think there comes a point where you say, if you don't agree to this method, you don't get to work here. Like, this is, you define your parameters to work here. Like, this is what we do. We do the Kaylee method, the Kaylee kiss. And if you don't want to do the Kaylee kiss, this may not be the home for you. And it's being confident also in that part as a business owner to say, this is what we ascribe to, our proprietary method, and we're going to stick to our guns.
Yeah. And it becomes an SOP, Exactly, I know you're a systems girl. And so, the onboarding and training process becomes systematized. It becomes consistent. It's documented. It's replicatable. So like if, you're thinking about, I want to scale up to more locations, or I want to be able to expand and still provide this really beautiful level of consistency and continuity, in terms of the patient experience, it's all in this process. It's all documented. This is the way we do it. You train to it, you move to it, you adhere to it, and you market to it. It's just one beautiful through line for everything, the way you brand, the way you build the infrastructure, the way what you're known for. And it can become really, and I'll discuss in the next session as well, so many valuable pieces of asset building, in the sense that this could become your signature talk. Yeah. This could become a course. This could become a training academy. This could become a methodology that you become distinctly known for, that like Julie Horn and her diamond lip ratio, people fly 10,000 miles to go experience this. And a lot of times, Tiffany, it's not something crazy, right? It's just that we're giving a patient a really natural result, but we're not calling it a natural result, because everybody is, right? We're calling it something that is known and distinct to us.
I look at Alex Ribkin, look at rhinoplasty.
Yeah.
He put that thing on the map. But as you think about this, I am a systems girl. I love data. How do you define or look at your market, look around you and say, I have found the gap, I found the niche, I found the place where I can really dive in because no one else is doing it? Is there a methodology for that or a way that you, with your clients, approach that?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you for asking that question, because I think we forget that we're here to solve a solution in the marketplace, right? Where so many of us are like, I see money, like dollar signs, I'm going to get into this industry. And that's where the first step to kind of the challenges occur versus coming in and asking yourself, I'm in this marketplace that's saturated, right? We have some, if you have clients in New York, or I'm from Orange County, so in Newport
Dallas,
Beach,
they're everywhere.
Name it, right? Like any metro. I mean, quite honestly, you could be in a building with 5 or 10 other injectors and of different specialties that also inject and, all of the things. So like the reality is, how do you actually say I'm different or I'm special? And if you're just solving the same problem everyone else is solving, then how are you unique? And I think that's the first question to ask is, what is the gap? Who's underserved? How is somebody, how am I doing it differently? And sometimes we know this because we have this like chip on our shoulder where we're like, I'm so frustrated. Every time a patient comes in, they're overfilled or they're this or they're that, or they think this, and we get mad, right? And so I always say, like, don't get mad, get even. And not like go egg them or something, but you know what I mean? Like, okay, so let's get smart about it. And so first step is identifying the gap. And a really valuable way to do this, like I think a really great sort of tip, like insider tip, is asking yourself, why would my patient leave my well-respected competitor to come to me? And if the answer is they wouldn't, then you want to think about what you're showing up to do. But if you can answer that question, you might ask them. And they might tell you, well, I came to you because of this. And so you kind of can start to understand, like, okay, there is a place for me. And this is where, when we talk about niching down, I'm going to focus my marketing on solving that gap or that solution versus just advertising the things.
Yeah, and I think, it even goes back to this idea of like a high gross or high margin, low volume, or, low volume, high margin. Like even figuring out what kind of practice you want to be. Do you want to be concierge and white glove, or do you want to be a factory who's seeing patients, leaky bucket nonstop? Because that dictates how you build your schedule, how you look at your branding and marketing opportunities, what kind of patients you're going to go after, what kind of demographic or income levels. Where you're going to put your practice as well. Because if you want these affluent, low amount of patients, big amount of money, you've got to go to places where they live. They're not going to drive across town most likely. So I think this dictates, a lot of decisions as you grow. You may not know that answer now and you're in a certain location, but as you think through what you could be or who you could be, then it starts to kind of unlock all these other parts of your business and how you step forward into, hopefully into your success story. Eventually.
Absolutely. And I think this brand positioning conversation is, to me, that's the key to everything, is knowing where you're positioned in the marketplace because of that, right? So when everybody else is discounting, your natural reaction is, oh, well, they can go there and get it cheaper. But if you think about, look at other industries, right? I used Four Seasons as an example. Somebody that wants a Four Seasons experience isn't going to be Googling the Courtyard, right? Like, or Holiday Inn. And these are all a place you can go get a bed, you can lay down, you get a shower, everything's covered. But that client that is looking for that specificity, that specific high-end experience or the specific results, they don't want to be sitting in a waiting room with somebody that's, haggling with the front desk about how much they're paying for their Botox. They want exclusivity. They want to feel like a VIP. They want significance. And so understanding that you're catering to that's where you're positioning yourself, it does drive all of the decision making. And again, that goes back to then how do you rather than just say we cost the most, how do you create something that people can come to you for that Four Seasons, whatever it is.
Well, okay, so let's think about this too, because this is my question. I am a business runner, not the owner, but I do run a business. You run one as well. If I'm hearing you say all this, thinking to myself, gosh, yes, preaching my language, I'm with you, sister, I love it, but I have no time. I am the injector, I'm the janitor, I'm the HR person, the payroll girl. How much effort is this going to require from me, or how can I even do this, or is it worth investing the time now and letting go of something else because long-term this pays off? So how do they fit this into their current model to get it all done?
Yeah. Well, number one, this is why we built this master series, is that you'll have this methodology completed by the end of this course, which is a few hours, right? In total, you can pause and take it and work through it at your own time. But the bigger answer to your question, and more important answer to that, is that you cannot generate more time for yourself by working. You can't, right? You can't work your way out of overwhelm. and it's, I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think a lot of times, especially I see with injectors, is they're used to running fast-paced schedules. They show up, they usually don't have lunch, right? Like it's maybe one pee break. And then it's like, Kaylee, I have no time to work on this. And yet this is the key to creating this space where you can start to delegate treatments to other providers. You can start to brand your practice in a way that is going to help you achieve a higher profit margin with fewer patients. You become, right, start to get paid for speaking, right, instead of just like showing up, all of those things. And so it's a matter of shifting your value in your productivity and what you can make as a provider, as a runner of the business, to somebody who becomes the visionary for the business, who's creating the strategy that's building the business of the future. And I think that goes back to what we opened up with, Tiffany, is that the bookend challenges, right? I'm too small to do anything, or I'm too big and overwhelmed. And so you have to just decide, and you have to say, this is something that I realize I'm running a business of today, but in order for me to move this business into what I want it to become, which is different than what today's business is, I have to take the time to build that. And I think the ones who realize that and start to create the habits of committing themselves to working on their business see significantly faster growth and see significantly more, have significantly more joy and love for their business through the process of that growth.
And I think you can't grow until you do it. I mean, I think growing, when you're already frantic, to then grow, I mean, you just multiply the chaos. Trust me, I'm someone who's done it. I mean, I living testament to that. But we think about here at AR all the time. You have to kind of go fast or go slow to go fast. Yes. We really believe that. And I think this is a way to dive in, to spend some time on learning about the business. We spend so much time on training with injectables, adverse events, cadaver labs. Like, gosh, there's a cadaver lab every single week all the time. But we don't spend enough time teaching business owners how to be a business owner. I mean, it's just such an untapped market. It's about our gap. That's a gap that we both have as well. Right. Because that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where the great injection skills alone will mean nothing if there's no place to demonstrate them, or there's no patients to demonstrate them on. And so I feel like we have to make a choice in our industry of, being the pie maker or being the pie shop owner. It's a different journey, but you've got to be really good at making pies to open the shop, like obviously. But then at some point you have to find other good pie makers to help keep the shop open so you can have a vacation, or you can go home before midnight every night, or
that.
the things that make you enjoy and have passion for your life and living.
Yeah. And I think no shame to anybody who's grinding it and working to hustle. My gosh, it is amazing. And also, you put your dues in already, and now you get to, right? And I think there's that worthiness, that sense of I heard this just last week. But for me to actually only work to inject 3 days a week, that's coming down the road. No, it's not. It's coming, you decide, and then it's this sort of counterintuitive philosophy of don't build the systems first. You build the lifestyle you want to live, and then you build the infrastructure to support that. And I think you make a really great point, Tiffany, about growth, because we talk about everything's about growth, right? Mm-hmm. Grow the business, grow my sales, grow my revenue, grow my team, grow my locations, grow my training academy, grow my visibility. But if we're just focused on growth, we're also going to grow complexity. We're going to grow headaches. We're going to grow stress, and we're not going to get any more time, to do the things we love. And so it's a shift from traditional growth into scale. And I'll talk about that in session 3, and we'll recap on that at the end of this master series as well, that scale is something that takes strategy and it takes time. But once you put the work in the beginning, that's when the magic happens. That's when you get traction and you grow all of the things you want to grow without growing your time. So you're essentially growing your business through assets instead of your hustle.
And eliminating redundancies and all the things. I think it's interesting during COVID, we learned a lot of great lessons. We've forgotten many of them since then, but people look at their balance sheet and their P&L and said immediately, I have redundancies everywhere. I'm spending money on things that don't matter. And the things that actually did matter, I didn't invest in it because I was so busy to not see. The forest and the trees got very confusing for me. And so we all cut our costs, cut our expenses down, and we were really humming coming out of the pandemic. And I think that's why we saw so much growth after the pandemic, because we were put in a position to have to be smart about business and be very lean. So then we were basically printing money because we didn't have a lot of overhead. We've all kind of inched back into now we've got redundancies, we have additional employees. We have people who are doing weird scheduling things. We say to AR all the time, weird schedules, weird packages, weird memberships, making it overly complex for patients to understand. And I think we're veering off the path maybe a little bit again. And so I think this can get us kind of right the ship one more time back to it and remember what we did after COVID, because the pandemic did teach us so much about being a lean, mean, fighting machine, if you want to call it that in business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. And I think having this proprietary aesthetic method, it forces you to focus, like just focus in general, but also focus on the things that actually drive impact in your business. So we talk about the 80-20 rule or the law of unequal distribution. We know that 80% of our results come from only 20% of the things that we do. You know, if you think about it, that applies to so many things in life, anything really, you know, and even within your business, 20% of the services you offer are producing 80% of the results. So if you took the time to really audit your business and look at that and build out a methodology that drives clients to those core services, the things that, and niching down to that, building yourself as an expert in that, your patients are going to come to you for everything else because you've given them such a wow experience.
And you have it together. I think at the end of the day, looking at this entire scope of what this course will offer, you'll walk away from it being able to showcase to patients that we have our stuff together here. When you walk in the front door to when you come back and rebook again, we are buttoned up. Things are done well. They're consistent. No matter which French fry box you choose, it's all the same taste. I feel like the McDonald's method, while we think of McDonald's, it applies it here. I mean, it tastes the same wherever you go in the world. I feel like patients, they want that. Their lives are also so chaotic and so complex that to come to an oasis and to feel like they're being taken care of and the pilot knows where the plane's going and how to land it, that is a place where I will hear people say, I will leave my office to go somewhere else because it's too chaotic. It's just too much drama there. I get rescheduled all the time. Things don't make sense to me. I just have to get out of it. It's too much for me mentally. They want to come to an oasis that's like well curated and branded and put together and perfect. So I feel like you leave this course, before you go to the scale to the next step, you will have a really good understanding of what that could look like for you as a practice owner.
Absolutely. So should we talk
tell
through
us what
the
it
course
looks
itself?
Like. Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Awesome. So this podcast recording, this interview is essentially our first session to introduce you to the programming, talk to you about what a proprietary aesthetic method is. And then in the next session, I'm going to walk you through how to position your business in the gap that we talked about, how to identify where you're supposed to be. We're going to do a little bit of a 101 around brand positioning, thinking about where you fit, essentially becoming competition less. So I think what's really great about this session is it's going to help you view competition in a different way. Get excited about competition and not let it scare you off, not so that you're not reactive to competition, but that you're controlling the narrative around where you're going. And then in session 3, I'm going to teach you how to step-by-step develop your own proprietary aesthetic method. And then in session 4, we're going to come back together, recap, talk about some of the highlights from the program, and then talk about how you could continue, once you have this methodology in place, continue to work with the Aesthetic Record team and with KLC to continue your journey of business growth and scale. And then within this program, you'll have a downloadable resource guide that it's comprehensive guideposts and notes and resources to supplement a lot of the curriculum that we'll be teaching, and a proprietary method tool builder so that you can actually take this stuff and not just learn, but workshop through it, get this stuff on paper, take it to your team, implement it into your business, and you've got a really beautiful, nice package that you're not just going and learning something, but you're actually taking it back and making it useful for your business.
I think doing it, that's
doing the work.
Yeah, we have this beautiful giant conference every year, and I say, are you going to go back and actually do what you've learned, or are you just coming here to be part of it? I think this is like, you're going to put in the work, right? You're going to be able to, if you put in the work, you're going to walk away having a tremendous amount of value in the course. And we've looked at the content. We've talked about it a lot with our team. I mean, it's what our customers need, they desperately need, because we can only go so far with the technology infrastructure. Then it takes the soft skills, the brand infrastructure to really make your business grow. So if you have your technology nailed down, you have your HR processes, you've got payroll done, you have your taxes and your CPA and all the things that are really the cornerstones of the business part of it. This is the icing on the cake that makes all of that really come alive and you really get the ROI on all the things that you've done to build the foundation of your infrastructure. So this to me is like the missing piece. This is our gap as the industry. You're solving our gap. So
yeah, thank you. No, I'm excited. My dream would be for every aesthetic industry owner and practice to have their own methodology and be known for something. And I think that will take our industry a long way. Be able to help providers stand for something, versus just be another Instagram.
Another Instagram famous person. Yeah. And we will have tons of information about how to register for this course, where to find it. We'll be hosting it with Aesthetic Record, so you'll have access to all the sessions. Obviously, session 1 here, the 2 that we'll have next, and then obviously our wrap-up at the end. So price-wise, what's it going to cost us?
Yeah, so we $297.
That's cheaper than getting my glabella done with toxins.
No, I know it's way too cheap, but the idea was, again, like a valuable resource that we want this not to be cost prohibitive, but something that is just a no-brainer to go in and start to look at your business from a new perspective. I think that everybody needs it. So.
Well, and I want to say one thing about that, because this is my hot button, Kaylee. Okay. Is people say, oh, it costs, things cost. And I think about, what is a unit of your time worth?
I know.
If you were to do this on your own, at home, at night, thinking about how you can make your business better and build it, we're talking, I don't know, weeks and weeks, 40-hour week times what you make per hour, bringing in the practice and profit over X amount of months, or the cost literally of one of your patients' glabella. It's all about choices that you make, and I feel like these are things that are such valuable assets at such a ridiculously low price, by the way, that you'd be crazy not to do it.
No.
You just have to hang up this podcast and go get it. Go do it.
This is a multi-million-dollar value project. If you do this and you implement it, you get your team on board and use this as an asset in your business. So I mean, if you don't take this course, you're crazy.
If you don't, we will come find you.
We're going to let you down.
Now, we'll link this all into all the comments. We'll send out a few marketing email letters for you guys to see, put on our Instagram, have it everywhere. If you don't find it, we will hunt you down to make sure that you get it. Also on our marketplace as well for Aesthetic Record. And you can access Kaylee there as well. She has all kinds of other content too, and all kinds of other programs. But this is the entryway to mega success, in my opinion. So
absolutely.
Well, so glad to have you on and talk about this and do our session 1 together. So guys, tune in for sessions 2 and 3. And thanks for coming.
Yeah. Wait, before you go, if you're vibing with this conversation and want to join me on my mission to help 1,000 inspiring and intentional women cross the next $1 million milestone in their business this year, or maybe you want to become one of them, head over to Facebook and join our free community, the Fierce Factor Society. Over there, we are taking this conversation to an elevated level. Get access to resource guides, podcast supplements, and guideposts, direct communication with me and my expert team, and of course, a society of fierce women making big moves and disrupting the status quo in aesthetics and wellness. You can link directly through the show notes or head to Facebook and search up the Fierce Factor Society. See you there, goddess.